off, I just want to say I love the show. I think it's awesome.
How dare you?
I think it's funny.
Very bold.
I was a fan of The Tick before, and what you guys turned it into, good job. I really love it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
So on that note, I do want to get started. I would like to start with you, Peter. How did you come up with this voice? I know that you were a voice actor before, but was there anything specific that you went into to create your Tick voice?
I think when I first started talking to Ben about it, one of the steers he gave me was like a 1960s radio announcer, and I think that was the one that stuck with me the most. Really.
There's the other one that we realized halfway through production.
Oh, what? Candy Crush.
The Candy Crush.
Yeah.
You had a Candy Crush voice?
Yeah. What's the... God, I haven't played Candy Crush for...
what Jelly Rush? Or
Sugar Crush! Yeah. So a little bit of that as well.
And then you realized that you wanted to switch over to the 60s radio host?
Yeah.
They're similar, though. They're like neighbors.
Yeah, I can see.
But it's weird because I knew I was going to be asked this question, and I thought, and actually, I don't know. I don't consciously do anything now.
You were just meant to do that voice.
I think so. It just sort of is encoded in the words, I think.
Well, it's good. I love it, and I think it suits the character perfectly.
Oh, well,
I'm very impressed.
Thank you.
And with you, Griffin, Arthur is a much bigger part in this show than he was before. Were you nervous about reinventing your character?
Yeah. Especially because there is so much uncharted territory with it, you know?
Yeah.
Like, Ben wrote this new version of the character that I feel like wasn't negating anything he had been before, but expanding it. But when you're setting that up, it can be a little disorienting to be like, this isn't exactly what I'm used to, and I'm just the guy getting hired to play that. So you want to like do justice to what he's trying to expand the character to be, but also try to put fans at ease that like, I get it, I know who this guy is, I'm gonna give you the Arthur that you want, hopefully.
And did it feel like it fit comfortably? Did you feel good in the part?
Yeah, I feel like this is the one role I was meant to play. I'm gonna retire as soon as this is done. I don't know if I'm suited for anything else. No, I think, you know, like, it's always work, but I say that, like, sometimes you get a part or even just an audition and you're like, I have no idea what to do with this. And you're kind of like scourging around the beach with a metal detector looking for anything that pings. And this was like, I knew where the treasure was buried immediately and I just had to dig, which still takes a lot of energy and effort. But it was so clear to me, I got who he was, and was a fan of the old versions as well, so I kind of knew the shape of what Arthur needed to be in that sense.
Well, I love it. I think that you portray him perfectly, and I really love getting a sense of his background story, something that we've never seen before. So I agree. I think you both fit your parts very well.
Yeah.
And you both had mentioned talking to Ben Edlund about your characters. Now, was there something that he specifically asked you to maintain about your character? Something where he's like, if you do anything with your character, make sure you do this.
He didn't really say that. He would, you know, occasionally we'll come up with some ideas of like, hey, maybe we could say this, or and sometimes it's a yes, and sometimes it would be Ben would be like, no, Tick wouldn't say that, or.
Yeah, he's like lived with these characters for decades, so he's never like stern about it, but he's got such good sense, and sometimes you come to him with an idea and he goes, that's almost Arthur, but it's a little more like this. Like, he has such a fine sense of where those lines are. He told me to always remember my lines. That was the big note he gave me, because otherwise I was wasting a lot of time on set.
So you can't stray away, no improv?
No, I'm joking. The thing he said to me was, you know, that Arthur had always been a little more of a comic relief character, and he wanted to make him more of like an emotional, you know, co-protagonist on this. So he wanted to make sure that the integrity of the character was never sacrificed for a laugh. Okay. Like, this is a comedy.
Yeah.
You know, I want someone who knows where the jokes are, knows how to identify them, but I don't want the audience to ever be laughing at him. which maybe Arthur more in the past has been like, you know, they're this goofus and gallant duo, and you're sort of laughing at the juxtaposition of the two of them. So that was like the big fine line, was like, you know, I don't want to sacrifice his integrity.
And I think you guys were very successful with that. I find a lot of comedy in the show, but I'm also very intrigued with Arthur. And one thing I've noticed watching the show is that he's actually kind of courageous. In the past comics and TV series, he's always like kind of a wimpy guy, and his catchphrase was "not in the face." Mm-hmm. But for your character, he actually is a hero at heart, and I think that's quite impressive. Is that something that you intended?
It was something I hoped would work, you know? I thought it was quite a risky gambit to ask people to view me as heroic. But I mean, Ben used this term that I really like called, he says, you know, I was just trying to do the math. You know, I've like had these characters for 30 years, and I just tried to do the math to figure out how they would have ended up there. So he said the big question was like, well, Arthur's always been a wimp, and he's always been terrified, and he's overwhelmed by his circumstances, but he still is putting on this costume and going out into the front lines and fighting crime every day. You know, in the cartoon show, in the comics, and all these things, we see him like fully developed. He emerges in the suit having already made this decision to be a superhero, and you go, why would this guy, if he's so scared, choose to do this? And so I feel like, especially the arc of this season was trying to do the math to explain, like, you know, by the end of the season, he's still a very timid person who isn't confident that he's not going to die, you know, feels overwhelmed by his circumstances, but he is courageous in that he chooses to be there in spite of his limitations.
And you had also mentioned that you were familiar with the comics and TV show beforehand. Peter, did you have any knowledge, or do you know a lot more about it now, taking on the role of the Tick?
I didn't have that much knowledge of it before. Which is weird because it's very much my sense of humor and but then once I got the part, I didn't want to be influenced by any previous incarnations of it. You know, I think I might allow myself that luxury now a bit more, that I've figured out my version of who he is, but no, it was a weird tick-shaped hole in my in my cultural what word?
Diet.
That's the word. Yeah.
Cultural diet. I feel like I was in the opposite position where I tried to not let on to Ben what a big fan I was until I had already gotten the part.
Yeah.
Because I got the sense, he sort of implied early on that he wanted to make sure he found people who did their own thing. And so then later when I was hired, and it would have been legally complicated to fire me, and I started referencing all these old things.
It's not impossible.
It's impossible, just complicated. No one has wanted to put in the effort yet. But I could see Ben was starting to get freaked out, where it's like, well, you know, I mean, but those don't pay too much attention to those other versions, you know, they're alternate reality Arthurs. He really gave us a license to sort of make these characters our own. Mm. Yeah.
And since you are familiar with the material, are there any villains that you want to go up against in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think Chairface Chippendale's the big one. That's the one we always get asked about.
That's pretty iconic.
He also is he's visually, I think, one of the greatest villains of all time in any superhero, you know, property. And I think people want to know how that needle would be threaded in live action, which would be quite a thing. There's a superhero that I stumped for really hard. I bugged Ben about it too much. He literally appeared in like 2 panels. His name is Hand Grenade Man.
Oh, yes.
And there's the issue where they go to the superhero nightclub and they're running down all the other superheroes, and there's this dude in kind of like traditional, you know, shorts and cape and spandex bodysuit, just big paunch, bad comb over, just kind of angry, holding a hand grenade. And Tick goes, who's that? He goes, that's Hand Grenade Man. I go, what's his power? He's got a hand grenade. And that's it. And he goes, you'd be surprised what you can get done with a hand grenade. And his power is just the threat of one time he can let go and blow everything up. He's got one hand grenade.
So it's
he's pulled the pin at some point.
The worst power to have.
Yeah, I think he's a great character. I think that's the role that Paul Giamatti's been looking for. That's the one he's been searching for all these years.
And did it seem like Ben was for bringing back this character?
Interesting. I don't know. I still try to, because it's not like you have to write a whole hand grenade man arc, you know? Just satisfy me once, put him in a scene, invoke him for half a second. Paul Giamatti will just be a day player. We'll pay him scale. He'll self-report, and everyone's happy.
Yeah, he'll bring his own hand grenade.
Yeah.
And for you, Peter, is there any type of villain that you would like to go up against? There's some pretty crazy villains, so literally anything you could think of, it probably already exists.
I mean, you know, I'm going to say Chairface Chippendale again, you know, because I think the challenge of, you know, making, you know, one thing that he's done with this incarnation of the Tick is to have it all take place in a sort of a real world, feels authentic, you know, and I feel like how would you do Chairface Chippendale in this real way? I mean, you know, we've had some pretty crazy things in the first half of the season, but they've all been just the right side of plausibility. But I think Chairface Chippendale, that would be a real challenge. And I think you could do it. So you would be able to, you would kind of accept. I mean, like, I don't know, like, the origins of Chairface Chippendale.
They've never been explained. No one knows how he ended up that way. He's also got a son whose name I'm forgetting.
He's not Ottoman something, is he? Or...
I don't think so. I think there is an Ottoman Empire character,
right,
who is exactly what he sounds like, right. An empirical Ottoman man. But I do think, like, the pilot episode, I think you look at that and go, how could they ever get to a point where Chairface Chippendale would work in this world? And I think they arced the absurdity really well over the course of the season, where bit by bit you get more and more classic kind of like Edwin Tick insanity, where, I mean, there's so much of the second half of the season where we were acting with characters that weren't on set with us, because they're robots or dogs or different sizes, you know, than an actor can really be, and which is difficult, but is kind of fun when you watch the final product and you're like, oh my god, I'm on scene doing a scene with chemistry with a thing that wasn't there on the day. But it definitely feels like by episode 12 the ground is kind of set, where I think Chairface could work in this world.
You could care about it.
Right. That's the big thing. Can we make people care about Chairface Chippendale? That's season 3 goals. Yeah.
I think it could happen. I mean, they put such, like, devotion to Arthur's character.
Yeah.
They can do anything.
Yeah.
Now, you did mention about how Ben Edlund didn't really give Chairface Chippendale a backstory, which is common. The Tick, he's never really revealed Tick's backstory, and he kind of does it on purpose. But I would like to know, Peter, if you could give him a backstory, what would it be?
And this is canon. Whatever you say is canon.
It's gonna happen.
Oh God! Wow. I mean, I haven't really thought about it, because I guess it's so sort of, it's so amorphous within the. It seems like it's integral to the show that his backstory is never explained.
It's just meant to be a mystery.
Yeah, I think if I knew it, I think that would pose some really major problems for me as an actor.
If you knew where he came from, it would be harder to track the logic of what he's doing on a scene-by-scene basis.
Yeah. That really is the truth. That is really the truth.
He's just like a force. Like, he always has been, he always will be, and he's so unwavering in like what he stands for and how he behaves and all of that.
Yeah, it's just I turn up in the scene and all right, okay, what's going on? Yeah, which is pretty much how I approach.
We do it on set every day.
Acting. Yeah.
Now, for my final question, if you guys could, in your character's voice, could you give our viewers some heroic advice? And it could also be to convince them to watch The Tick Part 2.
It's going to be really hard for me to find Arthur's voice. It's a big step away. Let me try to find the page. Okay, there it is.
Yeah.
if you really want to stand for good and justice in this world, be courageous, stay at home on your couch, leave the fighting to those more qualified, and watch the second half of the Tick Season 1 on Amazon Prime Video.
Watch the Tick. It's neat.